Glory to Jesus Christ. Good morning.
Good morning, Father.
During Vespers, every time we have Vespers, there are 7 prayers that are recited by the priest. Most times, most people don't get to hear them. The second prayer that gets done, and it's usually done during the psalm that's being read, pay attention closely to the words. O Lord, do not rebuke us in your wrath, nor chasten us in your anger, but deal with us according to your kindness, O physician and healer of our souls. The healer of body or souls? Which one is it? The souls, right? The physician and healer of our souls. Guide us to the haven of your desire. Enlighten the eyes of our hearts to the knowledge of your truth, and grant us to pass the rest of the day and the entire time of our life in peace and without sin at the intercessions of the Holy Theotokos and of all your saints. I am sure at some point everybody has heard, it doesn't matter what walk of life you have been in, you have heard today's epistle reading where it talks about St. Paul saying about the thorn and the flesh. I'm sure everybody has heard at least that somewhere, sometime. So he is asking God, right, to remove that thorn and the flesh. But he says first, lest I should be exalted above measure, and in the abundance of revelation, a thorn in the flesh was given to me, a messenger of Satan to buffet me. What does that mean? And by the way, what does the thorn mean? How many of you ever been stuck with a thorn? Right? Pretty much everybody's been stuck with a thorn. But did you know that that word that St. Paul's using is a tent peg? It's not just a little thorn. I mean, can you imagine having this driven through your arm or your leg? Right? This is about the size of a tent peg. This is what St. Paul is talking about. This is what is driving him crazy. This is what he is going to God and asking God to remove from him. But what is that thorn? He doesn't tell us. I know the thorns that I've had in my life. The tent peg that has been stuck in my life for most of my life has been my weight. I'm a heavy guy. I joke about it now. I used to take offense, but now I accept it. I know people look at me sometimes now that I got a white beard like Santa Claus, right? But now it doesn't bother me. I don't like the weight. I don't like it at all. I have gone numerous times to God. I have tried all different types of diets and everything else. And it's a messenger of Satan to buffet me. Because my weight has allowed me to trust in God. My weight has allowed me to bend my knee to trust that God's going to see me through, because there are some days where I am such pain and such hurting that I can't barely stand. I know a lot of you don't get to see that, but my wife has witnessed many times or in the morning where I barely can stand. And I go to my prayer wall hunched over a chair doing my prayers. But lest I be glorifying in myself, the Lord has allowed those things to happen to me because it's a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to buffet me. Lest I be exalted above measure. Concerning this thing, I pleaded with the Lord 3 times that it might depart from me. And what does the Lord say? My grace is sufficient for you. I don't know about you, but there's been many times where I have prayed to God and I have not received the answer that I was wanting, nor that I was expecting. And now that I look back on some of the times where I prayed to God, I glorify God for the times He didn't answer some of my prayers. Because some of those prayers, I would not be standing here in front of you if I would have had them answered. I would have not been standing here and gone to the hospital and visited and gone to your homes and been in your lives if I would have gotten my way. If I would have gotten my way, I would have been somewhere else visiting and being with other people. But no, God did not answer those prayers. God did not see fit for me because His grace was sufficient for me because He knew where I needed to be. You see, oftentimes we shake our fist at God because we don't understand what's going on in our lives. There are people that get abused. There are people that go through divorces. There are people that even die. And we don't understand. We get frustrated at those things. I mean, imagine today the gospel reading. The woman, the widow of Nain. This woman, and it's very specific. You must understand what is meant when Luke is talking and all these gospel writers are talking about. Why is it specific that he said that she was a widow, the only son of this woman? This boy was her only means of financial security. She had lost her husband. She had lost everything, and without this boy in her life, without this young man in her life, she was going to be destitute, possibly homeless. And therefore, Luke specifically says, it's a widow, the only son. And Jesus, when He is walking by, has compassion on her. If their boy wouldn't have died, if she wouldn't have lost her husband, guess what? She wouldn't have been walking by. Not with the young man on the byre. And what did Jesus do? He had compassion on her. He met her in her life. He came into her life at that specific time. And at that time, He went up and put His hands on the byre, and He told the young man, rise up and walk. Can you imagine? Can you imagine the life that she had lived afterward? Can you imagine who she went and told about the glory of God afterward? I know it's not in the gospel. There's too much for the gospel writers to have written for every single thing to be written in there. But I don't know about you, but I've seen some miracles in my life. And when I see miracles, I tell people about what God has done in my life and in the lives of other people. I go and share those things because God's glory is what we live for. The messenger of Satan, the thorn that within my flesh, I glorify in God because it is through His strength that I am made strong. Every single time that I am able to minister, every single time that I'm able to go into the hospital, every single time that I receive a phone call, it is joy to me to be able to serve God in whatever capacity that I have for Him to be having me in my life. God has came into my life in so many ways. And Paul says that my strength is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, most gladly will I rather boast in my infirmities. He is boasting in his infirmities. He is boasting in the things that he has struggled with. Remember that St. Paul, who was Saul before, was a murderer. He was contributing to the death of Christians. He was contributing to people and persecuting the churches of God. But you know what we can rely on? The foreknowledge of God. God has foreknowledge, therefore He knows who we are going to become. And He will put things in our life, He will put people in our life, and He will continue trying. Because if you woke up this morning, guess what? You had an opportunity to come into this building and to find some sort of truth. You woke up this morning because God was not finished with you yet. You woke up this morning because God has something for you in your life. Every one of us, it doesn't matter what we're doing. It doesn't matter if we're a landscaper. It doesn't matter if we're a truck driver. It doesn't matter if we're a mechanic. You will find opportunities to glorify God in your life. And through those things, through thorns that we get put into our flesh, remember, it's not something small a lot of times. When we struggle with our anger, we have an opportunity to come to God and humble ourselves. When we struggle with sexual immorality, we have an opportunity to come to God and come and humble ourselves. Because the thorns that are put into our flesh are there for a reason. Today, we celebrate the prophet Joel, but we also celebrate the martyr Varis, a Roman soldier. That Roman soldier at one point, in the prison that he was guarding, there were 7 Christians that were in the prison. And those 7 prisoners were getting ready to go and be martyred and persecuted for their faith. And Varis had found his faith. Varis had found Christ. And the most likely of places in the Roman army, he had found his faith. And he had come to those people in the prison, and he gave them and ministered to them, and he gave them food and all the necessities that were needed. And during that time, when they were being persecuted, one of those prisoners died. And when they brought him out in front of the torturer, what happened? Right? The torturer said, well, there were 7 prisoners, I only see 6. Varis now, beforehand, when he was sitting with those prisoners, he had told them, I'm afraid, I'm fearful to confess my faith in God. I don't know if I'm strong enough to be persecuted. And they ministered to him right back. He provided food, but they provided the ultimate nourishment. They were the healer of the soul. And that time, when they were brought to the torturer, and the torturer asked, Varis stood up and said, I am the 7th one. I am the one. And he's the first one who got tortured. He's the first one that lost his life. And at one point, a woman named Cleopatra comes to him and finds his body. And her husband also is a Roman soldier that had died. And she lied. And she told the constable, the person in charge, that I want to take my husband out of the city. But she had planned the whole time to take Varis out of the city. And she took him to where she was from, buried him, and built a church over his body. And during that time when the church was built, what happened? She was there glorifying God and thanking Varis for the good things that had happened in her life. And she made a statement. And this is where I draw a caveat to the statement I'm about to make that she made. I said this last night during Vespers. Be careful what you pray for. Be careful what you ask God for. Because He does pay attention. He does pay attention to every word that comes out of our mouth, by the way. Every single thing. And she said to God, through the intercessions of Varis, do what is best for me and my son to glorify your kingdom. And as they were finishing that day's festivities to the consecration of that church, as they were walking out, her son took a fever and before midnight of that same day died. And she went into the church and started shaking her fist at God and shaking her fist at Varis. How dare you? How dare you? I prayed. I trusted you. I built a church in your name and in your honor. I prayed. And what happened? You took my son, my only son. Remember this woman today? This woman also did not have a husband. This woman only had one son. And this woman goes to God angry and furious because He answered her prayer, but not in the way that she required or wanted. And what happened? As she was shaking her fist, she fell asleep on the stair right in front of the church. And that night, Varis appears to her in a dream with her son by his side. Celestial armor, crown, a wreath of martyrdom for Varis, but a wreath of glory for her son. Remember, the halos that all that we see here is the wreath of glory and the grace that God has given to the people that we call saints. And he says to her, Varis says to her, woman, you asked for God to give the most glory to your son and yourself. And he did so. He answered your prayer. But, however, because you are crying out to God, because you are asking God for His grace and mercy, here is your son. Take him with you. He is allowed to go back to the land of the living. And you know what her son said? What are you saying to my mother? Why are you telling me to go back to the world? Don't listen to this woman. She doesn't know what she's talking about. That's not what I want. I want to stay with you. And for the rest of her life, Cleopatra glorified God because she did get her prayer answered. I promise you, if you go to God, He will answer your prayers. But again, the prayers must be, not my will, but your will be done, O Lord. It's hard to trust God. But remember, if God has foreknowledge, He knows where we're going to go. It may be some wild offshoots of where we're going to be going. But if we trust God and we find His will, remember, as I have said many times, the will of God, that path behind Christ, is only about as wide as the cross. It's not wide. It's a very, very, very narrow road that we find when we deny ourselves, when we pick up our cross and we follow after Him. That doesn't mean that there's not going to be landmines and different things that are put in front of us, because some of those things that happen to us while we're on God's will, they're messengers of Satan. Because in order for us to become glorified and sanctified, we have to go through the refining fires of this world. Because the refining fires of this world, we end up glorifying God in the next. Because it is our witness, it is our lives that can show our spouses and our children and our friends and the people of this world who Christ is, not who I am. It is because of Christ that I am able to stand here. It is because of Christ that I'm able to go in before the altar. It is because of Christ that I was able to get to this place. But I'm telling you, for those of you who know my story, in order for me to get to the priesthood, it was not easy. It was filled with tears. It was filled with suffering. It was filled with heartache. But glory to you, O Lord, for everything that you did in my life to bring me here. Trust Him and lean not on your understanding. And in all your ways acknowledge Him. He will make your path straight. And finally, St. Paul says, the power of Christ may rest upon me, therefore I take pleasure in the infirmities, in the reproaches, in the needs, in the persecution, in the distresses for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then I am strong. It's through the weakness that we become strong, ladies and gentlemen, my brothers and sisters. And when we suffer in this world, know that the crown that we are working towards is so much more beautiful than anything that we can possibly have here. And you've heard me tell you many times the things that you've suffered in your past. If it wasn't for those things that you've suffered in your past, you would not be here today. It's because of those things that now some of you have a priest sitting in your house coming to eat meals with you. Now you have a priest coming to your house to bless your house. You have a priest to come into your to your business to bless your business because God knew where you were going to be. Now you trust God where you're going. You don't have to walk at all except by faith, not by sight. Our sight can lead us to ruin. It's by faith that we need to walk. And through that faith, we can move mountains. All it takes is a mustard-sized seed of faith, Jesus says, right? And once you get that mustard-sized seed of faith, you know what your next prayer can be? Give me 2. Give me a second mustard-sized seed faith. Keep asking for faith. He'll keep giving it to you. But remember, the path to the cross is not easy. The path to the cross has a lot of tent stakes, a lot of thorns, a lot of messengers of Satan that buffet us for His glory and for always His glory. So we glorify and we praise the name of the Lord today. Amen.